Caroline Lucas, our guest of the day, got a ticking off during a debate in Parliament. Not the first, and she won't be the last. She was holding up page 3 of The Sun. You might be surprised then to learn that it was her T-shirt, rather than the half-naked models on the inner pages of the red top, that caught the eye of the chair during the session. But it's not just page 3 that women's groups and our guest, Caroline Lucas, are concerned about, but more widespread sexism in the media. Attention-grabbing headlines are what newspapers are all about. But are women being routinely portrayed by the media in a negative and sexist way? For women like me who work in the media, you want to be remembered for what you say and not just how you look, although clearly that's also important. A group of women's organisations has looked into the issue and focused the lens on 11 national newspapers and how they portrayed women over a 2-week period in their daily coverage. They found widespread sexism, and one women's charity, Eve's, has a particular concern.
We found, particularly in the coverage of violence against women, that commonly it would be placed right next to advertisements for the sex industry or for film and mainstream entertainment and culture that was showing violence against women as part of entertainment. So you had a juxtaposition of a serious issue of violence against women alongside the sort of glamorisation and titillating factor of violence against women.
But is there a link between the media's representation of women and violence against them?
Well, yes, we think there is. Not necessarily a directly causative link, but our media both reflects and also creates our views and standards in society.
I honestly do not believe that the manner in which women are represented in the media could cause them any physicality. If women were concerned about what was likely to happen to them, they should look to the video world of pornography, and let's deal with that.
Never far from the spotlight, The Sun newspaper's page 3 has long angered women's rights campaigners who regard it as an unacceptable daily dose of objectification. The Green Party's MP, Caroline Lucas, is calling for a ban on The Sun newspaper in the parliamentary estate and recently took her campaign into the chamber.
Order.
Noting that.
Can I tell the honourable member there's standards of dress that members must comply with, and I would ask the honourable member to respect that and put her jacket on, please.
I will, Mr Hood, of course comply with your ruling, but it does strike me as a certain irony that in this place you can get copies of The Sun. Perhaps I could even show you what's in The Sun, in 8 places.
I admire Ms Lucas, but it's more hot air. And since it's not illegal, and to a predominant number of people in our country, it's not offensive, and in fact it may even bring some joy along. And of course, being a member of the Green Party, you of course are by nature a killjoy.
Claire Short famously stood up in the 80s talking about these pictures. She tried to get a bill passed to make it illegal, and she had thousands of letters of support. 12 were actually from women who had page 3 mentioned to them while they were being raped, and yet The Sun called her a killjoy and told her she was jealous. Yeah, it's not harmless fun.
Accusations of sexism aren't just limited to the print press. The broadcast media can also cause offence. The BBC sports presenter John Inverdale apologised after saying that this year's women's Wimbledon champion Marion Bartoli was never going to be a looker, a comment that proved a turn-off for hundreds of viewers. And the former deputy editor of The Sun and the News of the World, Neil Wallis, is with us now. Neil Wallis, let's take the results from that report that found systemic sexism in the daily coverage of 11 national newspapers. Are you surprised by that?
Not really. I mean, the people who commissioned the report went looking for something to sustain their argument.
So you don't actually agree, you wouldn't say that there is that sort of amount of sexism in the daily coverage of national newspapers?
I think the media in this country is what it is. It's always been like that, and I don't think it's any more or any less. I think it's, people desperately trying to sustain a rather hollow argument.
It's a hollow argument that's being sustained here.
Well, I don't think it is, and the kind of reaction that I've had since having that debate, which wasn't just about page 3, but was about sexism in the media, the sort of response I've had has been overwhelming from people absolutely saying that they agree that they want a spotlight put on this. Just to be clear, what we're talking about is not censorship. What we're saying is that, for example, when you come to page 3 of The Sun, then, why should that be in people's workplaces? Why should that be open in cafes and on tubes and buses where kids can see it? If you go to the No More Page 3 website, there's some fascinating testimonies from people. A father who went to a hairdresser's with a 3-year-old daughter, and suddenly, the page 3 is out in front of them. And it's the normalising effect of it. If you want to go and find that kind of image, well, fine, go and find it, but don't put it where it's in front of everybody, whether or not we want to see it.
Can I just say, it must be absolutely wonderful that in Brighton at the moment things are so perfect that the MP spends her time in this sort of gesture politics.
I would love to come back on that, because
absolute nonsense of her in the chamber. Can I tell you what I really think she should have been demonstrating?
Why is it nonsense, though, to have a campaign if someone feels strongly about it? Yeah, but you were going to go on to something else. I just want to bring you to that first point.
No. My point is that I'd have had far more admiration for Caroline if she'd stood up with a T-shirt that said, "No more FGM." I'd have had far more respect for Caroline if she'd stood up wearing a T-shirt that illustrated the fact there are 1.2 million offences of domestic violence in this country. I'd have had far more respect for Caroline if she had stood up and talked about video porn, if she talked about sex slavery. These are issues that matter. Ban page 3 is gesture politics that is aimed at her core electorate.
And you don't think it matters? And you just don't think it's important?
No, I don't.
Well, first of all, the idea of why am I picking up on this subject at all, it's because of interest in Brighton. A number of women's groups have come to me. We're working together in the city about media sexism. So first of all, this is not just... I'm absolutely opposed to FGM, and I work
mutilation, just so everyone knows.
And I do work on that.
Why didn't you demonstrate about that in the House of Commons?
It's so interesting.
I tell you why.
No, just can you let me speak? Actually,
let Caroline answer the point
first. You weren't going
to
get the coverage. It was gesture politics.
It's not. It is absolutely not gesture politics, and I do work on all of those other issues. But you just challenged me a moment ago about violence against women, and I'm absolutely horrified of violence against women. I'm horrified at the fact that last year 60,000 women were raped in this country. I'm horrified by the fact that the NSPCC says that 1 in 2 boys and 1 in 3 girls thinks there are occasions, kids, when it's okay to hit a partner or to force them to have sex. My point is that the daily drip objectification of women creates a culture where those attitudes are more likely to happen. And it's not just me saying that. There are government reports saying that. There are UN reports saying that. And if you think that violence happens in a sort of vacuum, then I think you're very wrong.
Of course it doesn't. What I'm concerned about, Caroline, is just the blatant gesture politics of you standing up like that.
It got us talking about the issue, didn't it? It got us talking about media sexism.
Do you know Forward UK? Do you know Daughters of Eve?
Yes, I do.
You know what they're concerned about? Let me tell you, in this country, the government alone accepts there are 30,000 children in this country under the age of 10 who are at danger of the most severe form of FGM.
Yes,
no, don't just dismiss
it. Because you're talking about that.
Hang on. Important.
Right, you say it's far more important, but we have done the piece about the link between newspaper coverage, particularly, and this idea that Caroline says of the drip effect. What I'm wanting to find out from you, Neil Wallis, you're obviously supportive of other campaigns of violence against women,
It's about priorities.
Yeah, but hang on. If we're looking at this issue particularly, do you accept that there could be a link between the overtly sexualisation and portrayal of women in that way and the violence against them?
I think that in this society, we have film, we have the BBC.
Sure, but let's look at
interesting. It's so interesting how...
Do you think the coverage, that's what the report found, do you just say that there isn't a link, that it is overblown?
I don't
or
believe
you accept...
for 1 minute that there is a provable link between some images of women in some newspapers and the idea of violence against women.
Why?
Well, because I've never seen any evidence that stacked up apart from vested interest groups.
Well, I don't think the UN is a vested interest group, and I don't think the government's own report is a vested interest group. But what I find so interesting about your argument is that, back in the days of Claire Short, she was just told she was stupid, she was jealous and so forth. The arguments gone on now, and that's really interesting to see how, you know, you still won't actually engage on the issue. You still won't engage on the issue. The issue now is you're saying that it's not a priority, there are other more important things. There are many, many other important things. And I am campaigning on those. This happened to be one issue that got picked up. But what I want to do is to get you to focus on this issue. I want you to focus on this issue and not try and take us off onto all sorts of other issues. And the reason that you won't is because you can't sit there and say that in a culture where you have more and more images of objectified women, normalises women, young kids who see Page 3, 7 million people see Page 3 every day, and you're saying there's absolutely no connection between that and discrimination and violence against women. And I think if you are saying that, then you're in a complete minority.
Do you think, Neil Wallis, I mean, sex does sell newspapers, doesn't it? Those sorts of stories and those sorts of... Absolutely, in all the media.
Sex sells films, sex sells adverts.
And you accept that?
That exists, yes.
Right, I mean, and that is what newspapers are about. This idea,
No. You can't sit there and say a blanket, that is what newspapers are about.
No,
newspapers, all newspapers, like all TV channels, are balances of things.
Right.
There is one element that appears in some newspapers that are glamorised image. Now, let me tell you, turn to the city pages, for instance, of The Guardian and The Times and The Sunday Times, and you will see pictures of pretty women. I don't personally see why there's a problem with pictures of pretty women or pretty men.
Right, and in that sense, at the beginning of that film, I said, I want to be remembered more for what I say than how I look. But how I look is also important. You want to look your best, particularly when you're in a media like the television.
Well, of course you do, but that is a completely other argument. What we're arguing about here is whether it is appropriate in a daily newspaper, underline the word news, to have these kinds of images that kids from all ages can actually get hold of and see, and women, and in workplaces.
Yes, now that is the other issue.
No, it's not the choice.
People choose to buy.
Can I make the point? Because I'm absolutely making the point that is not to do with choice. Because when you go onto a bus and you're overlooked by a guy reading Page 3, when you go into a workplace, when you go into the cafes, it is not silly. It is absolutely that ubiquity of this that you don't have a choice not to look at it because it's in your face.
All right, I'm going to have to finish it there. I know, I know, but Neil Wallis, you'll be on again, no doubt, and Caroline Lucas will too. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.